Oi oi people, Silky here, and you're listening to the Lifer Musician Podcast. A podcast exploring the minds of creatives who've dedicated their lives to pursuing a career in music. The Lifer Musician Podcast is brought to you by Hookings Management, my artist services company that empowers our fellow DIY musicians to grow a monetised fan base without a record label. We offer a range of services such as online marketing, artist mentorship, release campaign management, videography, photography, graphic and website design, plus tons more useful services that are built to cater for independent musicians on small, self-funded budgets. Helping musicians market and monetize their art form is our passion. So if you're an artist that needs help taking your career to the next level, please feel free to reach out and get in touch via hookingsmanagement.com, where you can book a video call with me for some free advice on your project. On today's episode, I'm honoured to be joined by two-tone ska icon Rhoda Dakar. Rhoda first burst onto the UK music scene back in 1979 as lead singer of the BODYSNATCHERS, who was signed to the famous UK ska label Two-Tone Records. Rhoda has written and appeared on multiple top 40 singles, most famously the BODYSNATCHERS ska anthem Let's Do Rock Steady, which reached number 22 in the UK singles chart, and the Special AKA's top 10 hit Nelson Mandela. As well as being in popular UK bands the BODYSNATCHERS and the Special AKA, Rhoda has also had a very successful solo career and collaborated with many big names in the music business such as Madness, the Specials, Dub Pistols and the Interrupters, to name but a few. Rhoda has a wealth of experience as an artist, and I'm sure our listener base of DIY musicians will learn so much from her insights. So without further ado, let's get into it. Rhoda Dakar, welcome to the Lifer Musician Podcast. It's an honour to have you on as a guest, and I really do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come and have a chat with me today, so thank you.
Ollie Hookings of Death of Guitar Pop and the Lifer Musician Podcast. Thank you for asking me to come.
Pleasure's all mine. So I want to start by asking, where does your passion for writing and performing music come from?
I have no idea. Honestly, it's something that I have done from time. There is a picture of me when I must have been 3. I can't have been younger than that. I'm sitting at my piano. I had a little baby grand piano, which was, I don't know, maybe like 18 inches high or something. And I'm sat on this piano, just like pretending to play and then smiling at the camera. So I don't know. It's kind of always been there. Presumably, if somebody's bothered to buy me a piano at that age, like it was somebody else's idea and maybe not mine.
And did you, like, parents encourage it? Were they musical? Were they big fans of music?
My mum's a big fan of music. My dad was actually a musician anyway, so had been a jazz musician since the 1920s, because he was 62 when I was born, I should point out, which is why those numbers wouldn't necessarily add up normally, but he was granddad age when I was born, and he'd been a musician since, in fact, I don't even know since when, but he wrote lyrics and he was a vocalist. So drums. He played drums.
He played drums, yeah?
Sorry. Yeah, he played drums. But if you remember back in the day, it used to be called the Musicians and Drummers Union. Anyway, so.
What, did it really?
Yes. I'm not winding you up. Yeah. Yeah, musicians and drummers.
Brilliant. I want to wind my drummer up about that when I next see him.
Yes.
Okay, so let's revisit the early days of your career. Your first band, BODYSNATCHERS, seems to me like it was a bit of a roller coaster ride, signing to Two-Tone Records, having a big hit with Let's Do Rock Steady and appearing on national TV on Top of the Pops, all within a year of first forming. How was that experience for you at such a young age, and how has it shaped the rest of your career?
The thing is, I have nothing with which to compare it. So it was what it was. I mean, and yes, it was, it seemed to me it was happening quite quickly. But on the other hand, by the time I stepped on stage, with the Body Snatchers for the first time, I'd been performing on stage for like 10 years, over 10 years, I think. Well, no, 10 years. So 1969 was my first public performance. So I'd been on stage for 10 years. I mean, so like, yeah, I mean, now I'm fronting a band. It's like, well, I'll learn how this works. But I started singing and dancing to in old people's homes with my dance school. So and that was in the days, obviously back in the 60s, when there were old people's homes, publicly funded old people's homes, not ones you had to pay for, and they would all have like a little room where there was somewhere you could perform with a proper stage quite often. And so we used to do shows for them. And, they're like hardcore, man. If they don't like it, they're just like,
Frosty.
They're asleep. Yeah, they're asleep. They don't go, oh, lovely kids. They're just like, I want to get back to my bingo. And they're not, So you had to make an effort. You had to make a real proper effort.
So you'd had like a good 10 years worth of experience before you started the Body Snatchers. So you were already battle hardened.
Well, I don't know about battle hardened. I've just done a lot of different things, and I didn't start the Body Snatchers, I should point out. But I'd done singing and dancing in public. I'd done modelling. I'd done theatre, like youth theatre. And I'd come from working in the theatre, hoping, because I'd wanted to be an actress. But once I actually worked professionally in the theatre, backstage, I realised that I would only ever play nurses and prostitutes. And that really didn't chime with the Shakespeare on the Old Vic stage that I'd done when I'd been in youth theatre. And I just thought, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. Although my dad had been an actor as well. He'd kind of, after he died, it was quite funny. After he died, I found out all these things he'd been in, like, all these kind of famous 60s shows like Danger Man and The Avengers. And I didn't know he'd been in them, because part of them, it was obviously when I was a child and didn't really understand what he'd been up to. But, once, IMDb was invented, then you could kind of trace what people had done. But yeah, he'd done loads of it. So, so I had done singing and dancing, I'd done fashion, and I'd done theatre. So that kind of gives you a big, it gives you it's a broad enough experience so that when you go to stand in front of, and I'd been going to see bands for like about 6 years by that time as well. So, I kind of knew what to do.
Yeah, it preps you well, that, doesn't it? I remember being in my local youth club, and it was very much like a bit of an alternative hangout, you know what I mean? It was like a bit of a grungy spot, and I used to go when I was like from the age of 13 and just watch bands every Friday, and it was like an education. And I think that going and watching bands at that grassroots level, you've got a bit of an idea, haven't you, of like what to do when it's your turn. Do you know what I mean? Just from like studying it and being at a lot of gigs. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's still like, I think it would have helped, but I remember my first ever show was in that youth club and the monitors didn't work. I was 15, and it was so different to rehearsal, and I was really freaked out and not, I didn't feel like confident or even nervous really on stage. I was nervous before I went on, I remember, but I was just a bit like fish out of water, like what the fuck, I can't hear anything, and was just going through the motions, and it seemed to go well. The audience enjoyed it, but I do remember thinking like, whoa, this is like a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I can't hear anything. It's so different to rehearsal. So yeah, there's nothing like, it can only, like, watching others, do you know what I mean, will only prep you to a point. You've got to get out there and experience like performing and having a crap monitor mix and all the rest of it. Did you have similar experiences when you first started?
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, I think what was new for me was being able to address the audience directly as myself, because prior to that wasn't something I was able to do. I wasn't allowed to do it. When you're part of a dance school, you have, this is how we do it. It's a show, and it's all blocked out, and that's how you do it. There's no point at which you get to speak to the audience. And because prior to that, doing theatre or whatever, you don't break the fourth wall. I mean, I think the only time I ever did that was probably we did a panto at school, and then you obviously during panto you do address the audience directly, but you're still in character. So you break the fourth wall, as it's called. So you do address the audience, but you're in character. So this was me breaking the fourth wall, because that's what you do it when you front a band. You break the fourth wall, but you do it as yourself, or at least as the character that you're inhabiting to do the gig. Because obviously some people have characters that they use. I mean, I suppose particularly I'm alluding to people like David Bowie, who actually had characters that they inhabited to go on
He's
stage.
constructed that himself. He's not been. It's not a role that he's playing that's been given to him by someone else.
Yeah. But I was kind of myself basically making it up as I go along. And I think I have no memory of the nonsense I talk. I mean, I still talk nonsense on stage, and I know I do, and it's fine. I mean, I don't mind. But I remember Jerry Dammers, who came to my second gig, Jerry Dammers, Pauline Black, and Juliet Wills, who's now Billy Bragg's manager. They all turned up at the second ever gig. And apparently I said, I am the rudest of all the rude girls because I've got the tallest hair.
Brilliant.
That's apparently what I said. And that was impressive, apparently. I don't know.
So that's
the sort of nonsense I used to speak.
It's interesting because, we've been pals for a little while now. I've got to know you, and you strike me as someone that's naturally confident and just like a natural performer. But we've also spoke about imposter syndrome. So let's talk a little bit about that, because you've got like vast experience as a musician, but you still battle with that now, as I do. I think all performers do, and if they say they don't, they're probably lying or not like really in touch with themselves enough to, because it is a strange thing that we do, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I have been. I remember someone accusing me of being a narcissist, and I said, "Of course, I'm a narcissist. I am a performer." That's redundant observation. Whether I'm a malignant narcissist is the question, and that I would say that I am not a malignant narcissist. But yeah, I mean, if you're willing to stand up in front of people and make them listen to you, you've got to be a bit of a narcissist. I mean, that's not a normal thing to do. It's something you do. I mean, you do it within the comfort of your own family or whatever, but to then take it to the next level and do it in front of hundreds, if not thousands of people that's a different mindset. Imposter syndrome, I don't know. I mean, I think it's inevitable. If you don't question what you do, then it's likely you're not doing the best job. I think you have to reflect on what you could do better in order to do a better job. I'm sure there are people who don't do that, but they aren't people I go to see. I would say that bands and performers that I really like they will come off stage with a list of, right, okay, this is what we should have done better, and this is how we're going to fix it, and whatever. And I think if you don't do that, you don't improve. And if you don't improve, what's the point?
I mean, that is just professionalism at the end of the day, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, whether it's imposter syndrome or not, whether there is always a moment where you just think, I can't believe I'm getting away with this. But, and occasionally it kind of comes through on stage. You just take a moment and you look and you just think, this is hilarious. I can't believe I just said that. When I said something particularly bonkers, I've just said something, I just think, can't believe I just said that. And all these people think it's funny. All right, on with the show. You know what I mean? You just take a moment out and then you just, okay, back in, and you're back in the room. It's one of those.
Yeah. I mean, our ballroom show recently, that was such a step up for us. And the sort of two main thoughts that were going through my head were like, one, like, so this is fucking hilarious and mad, like, how have we got here, this is just crazy, how amazing is this? And then there was another voice just going, don't fuck this up, don't fuck this up, don't fuck this up,
Don't fall over.
yeah. So I guess you just sort of, it's not like that every show, because you know, you get used to, like, I mean, I'm not used to playing shows like that big of my own, so it was a new thing, do you know what I mean? And that's why I was thinking like that. But then you also, because it, you know, I over like a few years of leveling up as a musician, venue size and everything else, you do just get used to those voices, do you know what I mean? And they become, you just realise they're part of the course, do you know what I mean? I feel like maybe when I was younger, me at a show just in my head going, don't fuck this up, don't fuck this up, I would have taken that as, I'm not cut out for this. If I'm thinking like that the whole time I'm up there, or half the time I'm up there, should I really be doing it? But now I recognise that as imposter syndrome and just something that is going to happen, do you know what I mean? Because you're in a very unique position, and it's it's nerve-wracking playing to performing and singing songs and lyrics that you've written to all those people, and it will catch you off guard from time to time.
I don't know if I'm really nervous. I'm nervous till I'm there and I've stood on the stage and I've sound checked. Once I've done that, I'm kind of like, that's all right, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now I know it can all be done.
Yeah.
But I think until that point, there's a little bit of nerves. Will it all, will everyone turn up? But once you've sound checked, I just think, okay, got this. Then my only worry is to find a mirror that's actually got some light on it, and getting ready in time without having to chuck people out the dressing room and that. So, yeah, I mean, I would so love my own dressing room. Anyway.
Do you do vocal warm-ups and all that kind of stuff?
No, I don't do vocal warm-ups because, and I should do, but I think back in the BODYSNATCHERS we used to sing going to the chapel before we went on stage as a way of doing a vocal warm-up, but I don't think it was... we didn't think of it as a vocal warm-up. But now there's nobody to sing with. So, no, I don't. I should do. But I think there's probably something in my head that arranges the set in a certain way. So, so the least challenging song is at the beginning of the set. I don't know. Maybe I do that already, in a sense. But no, I should do vocal warm-ups. Do vocal warm-ups. It's important to do them, yes. No, I don't.
So you've been a professional musician for many years now. Vast experience in working as an artist in the industry. What have been your biggest challenges throughout your journey, and what's your secret to having longevity as an artist?
The biggest challenge is actually is getting paid. That's the biggest challenge. Actually getting money, doing the job, getting paid for it, getting paid the right money, getting paid the money that you're owed, and having enough money to survive. That is the biggest challenge for me always, and still is, really. It's like you just think, oh God, are we gonna, okay, so we've got this to do. I mean, especially if you're like planning a tour, it's like, oh my goodness, how are we going to get enough money to get through this and make it work and all of that and pay everybody. So the other side to that is, sorry, what was the second half of the question? I've forgotten. That second half was...
So it's what's your secret to having
longevity?
longevity?
Secret to longevity?
Yeah.
It's stupidity, I think, really. Because common sense would say... the best thing I could have done is go and get a job, maybe, I don't know, in something related, perhaps marketing. Go and get a proper job in marketing and earn a really good living out of that, and have all the things that that the people who come to see you have, like have financial stability and money in the bank and a nice house and secure financial future for your children. That is, that's what I should have done, but it's not what I did. And yeah, there's lots of days where I regret that. And I just
Really?
think, yeah, of course, because my kid, like my kids will live with me because I haven't got the money to fund them, to bung them some money so they can get somewhere to live for themselves. And much as I love having them live with me, I do love it. I do love it, and it does mean that you don't become an old fart and all of that. It's a joy in that respect, but I regret the fact that I can't give them what other people can give them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you have to make huge sacrifices, don't you? And as you say, I mean, you love what you do, and you're so passionate about what you do, and it's kept you young. So there are massive positives, and it's probably, although you've got some stuff there, some pain points, and at times regrets. The fact that you've been able to pursue your passion for your whole professional life has probably by and large made you a happier person, would you say? And that's made you a better mother in turn. So that other shit doesn't matter as much anyway. I mean,
I don't know. Does it make me a better mother? I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask my kids if that makes me a better mother. I have no clue. I think, the only thing I think made me a better mother is not being a mother when I was too young. I think that makes a difference. I think, by the time I had kids, it was like nobody was going to tell me how to do stuff because it was like, actually, I think I've made my mind up.
You trust things.
Yeah. I mean, not in a way that I knew stuff, just that I believed I knew what I was doing, which is not necessarily the same thing. I don't know. I mean, yeah, look, I do it. I kind of keep going forward because that's kind of, the mod ethos, as it were, onwards and upwards, which I do think is a really positive way of looking at the world. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think if I'd got a proper job and, wouldn't it be nice if I'd got a proper job and just, I could be thinking of retiring now instead of thinking of going on tour.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously a proper job does certainly offer you, stability that perhaps a music career can't. But would that have chipped away at your soul a bit? Do you know what I mean? Sat in an office working for people that to be fair, I say working for people that wind you up. You get a lot of that in a music career anyway, right? But at least it is your thing, and it's your, it's your creativity, and you're the driving force, and the product is something that you construct. You know what I mean? And
well, I don't know. Tell that to Lynn Franks. Lynn Franks PR. Obviously, there's like a, it's Absolutely Fabulous was based on her life.
Right.
I should. I mean, she's not that bonkers, but the idea of having your own. I could have had my own marketing firm.
Right,
I wouldn't necessarily have been working for someone else.
That's a good point. I didn't consider that. So, and you probably would have really, because I think musicians are naturally entrepreneurial. Do you know what I mean? And naturally independent thinking. So I think a lot of musicians that end up going like not pursuing a music career anymore and doing something more conventional often end up running their own businesses, don't they?
Yeah. Who do we know like that? No, but you see, that's the thing. It's like I think you can be a full-time musician if you make enough money. But like the rest of us, I think all have another little thing that we do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I've had to diversify. Yeah. If you're bootstrapping it like Def Guitar Pop is, and you're trying to compete with bigger labels, they've all got these pots, haven't they? Do you know what I mean? The funding, and we just don't have that. Do you know what I mean? We're doing it by hook or by crook. So yeah, Johnny and I need other gigs to help us live, and so that we can reinvest back into the pot so that we can keep growing the marketing thing. But that is getting to the point where we are going to have to, I don't know, I don't even want to say it, but like be a little bit more profit focused rather than growth focused, just so we can actually earn something half decent out of this. Do you know what I mean? Because
because you've got to live.
You've got to live, and I've got a family to support now.
Exactly.
Do you think that the last sort of, let's say, 5 to 10 years, with these online platforms developing the way that they have, so your social media websites, your e-commerce platforms, your patrons, etc., do you think it's helped, and do you think we're in a better time? Do you think it's easier for musicians to monetize now than it was, say, prior to all that, like 10 years ago?
Well, 10 years ago is only, 2013? And I think I did my first crowdfunding campaign in 2014. So, and I was certainly on social media before that.
So maybe it's longer than that then.
Yeah,
but prior
it is
to all those platforms.
Yeah. So 2014, I did my first crowdfunding campaign, and that was kind of an eye-opener for me. The fact that you could actually ask people to pay for something you hadn't even made yet, and they were willing to give you the money to do that. Unfortunately, there were sort of platforms. I'm trying to think of the one that I used. Can't quite remember.
Pledge Music.
Pledge Music, yeah, the one that crashed spectacularly. Yeah, that was the one I used. And what I found with that was, you get all this money in, but they would only give you, say, 70% of it, and they wouldn't give it to you until they would give you enough to produce the goods, but they wouldn't give you the money to be able to post them all out. And so you were in this ridiculous position of having to find money to post out the records, in order that they would then pay you the money to post the records. So that was,
it's a bit of a flawed concept.
Oh then. God, yeah. I mean, because there were others that were better after I found out that there were others that were better. But yeah, I used Pledge Music a couple of times. I used another one briefly the second time I did crowdfunding, but they were kind of hard to deal with. It was hard to understand how that worked. But yeah, Pledge Music was set up well for musicians, except for when it came to paying out. They hung on to the money too long, and it was kind of, on a couple of occasions I was like desperate. I was like, sort of on my uppers, trying to send out the stuff to get the money from them to send out the stuff. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I know just before they crashed, I don't know what it was, I had a suspicion, and I made sure I got all my money out before they went under. I don't know how I knew, but I just knew that I needed to get my money from them, and I did. And I know a lot of people didn't, and kind of got burnt.
Yeah, I was talking to an artist the other week that had that experience, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, it sort of defeats the object, really, doesn't it? Like them hanging on to the money for that long, and in the end, artists didn't get paid out, and fans didn't get the albums that they'd pre-ordered because the artist couldn't make them. They didn't have the funds because the platform had ripped them off.
Yeah.
So crowdfunding, certainly, it's in our experience, we had not as anything as rough as the Pledge Music, but we used Indiegogo to start with. And by the time we'd worked out, there was all these sort of hidden costs in that, and they served us well. You know what I mean? That we funded our first 3 albums through that platform, so I don't want to completely shit on them, but they did take a massive percentage, and there was kind of hidden costs in there that we didn't realise when we first signed up. And it was only when we got the final payout we saw, they take a few % for that on a card transaction or whatever. And then you don't get your money in like real time. You've got to wait for the payout, which when you're funding an album, you need that cash flow, don't you? So, but we found that Shopify, in fact, Brad found that Shopify. Props to Brad.
Well done, Brad.
Guys, I'm just here for it.
There's an app. What's the app called, Brad?
Oh no, there's loads of apps. There's one of them.
What's the
sales count up?
Sales count up, yeah. And so you can add like a crowdfunding meter, like with a target to your Shopify store, and you get your money in real time, basically, through PayPal and Stripe. So that's been really useful for us. So I think crowdfunding is brilliant. It's just about finding the right platform for it, and it's great because you can fund what I always say is it's like you create the equivalent of a record company advance from your fan base. But it's hard to make money from physical albums now.
Yeah.
You know, people say to me, "Oh, so, you know, a double vinyl, what's that cost you £8? But you're selling them for £25, aren't you?" But then they're not factoring in the 10 grand that it costs to go in the studio and paying pay a producer, pay the session players, and then music videos and ads and everything else. You know, it's
And time.
Time is
Time. It's
the
like our
biggest
time. Our time doesn't have a value on it, allegedly. You know, so I've spent a whole week doing stuff for social media. Yeah, and that's like, well, actually, that's time. You know, and if I were doing another job, I would get paid for my time, but you don't get paid for your time as a musician. And when you're doing marketing, like all the marketing stuff that you end up doing, like press and marketing, that's time, and that time isn't ever paid for. So, you know, there's a lot of input. There's a lot of not time constraints, but there's a lot of time that you have to spend doing stuff as a musician now that you perhaps, especially now with social media, you didn't have to do that before, but you did have to actually put time into creating relationships. So before, for instance, when you're signed to a label, a bigger label, you go in, you make. I mean, I always used to do. I think this is just something you should do anyway. It's like if you're working with an organisation, you should always make friends with that organisation. Work, you know, find out how it works, and give people the time of day. And I just think that's good manners, if nothing else. But it certainly oils the wheels of social intercourse, you know.
Fucking brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely does. But, you know, so it's quite funny when you go to a small label and they're all like working all the time. I like going to my label and they're all like really busy, and I'm like, but don't you like hang out and just do stuff? And like they don't, because they're working, you know what I mean? It's like, and you go into a major and you struggle to find anyone. If I'm honest, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not something you come across, but yeah, it's a different concept. But yeah, I mean, your time as a musician, so the time you take to go and see someone from the label is like, that's, you know, nobody considers that work, but actually, you know what I mean?
It is. Yeah.
You've kind of taken time out of your day to go and do X, Y, and Z, but yeah, so time is like, the time it takes to be a musician is massive. The amount of time in a day. And like, you know, even if I have, like say an agency ring me up and say, you know, we've got some work, do you want to come and do some work, which I still have to do, you know, I think, well, actually, no, this week I've got to do X, Y, and Z. And you look and you say, well, that's not really much, but actually I know that's going to take me 3.5 days to do that. And it seems ridiculous, you know, and that's providing that people get back to me when I ask them, and you know what I mean? And if they don't, then you can add another half a day onto that. So chasing people up and doing stuff, time is a massive part of being a musician.
Definitely.
You know, doing stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would say with Deaf of Guitar Pop, easily Johnny and I spent 80% of our time on that project on business, marketing, admin, and 20% being, maybe even like 90-10, I would say. 10% being an artist, you know what I mean? Writing, recording, performing. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things, I'm quite happy with that trade-off, because I think it's a necessary evil, and it puts us in the driving seat of our career. And I've been on a label before and had a bad experience with that. And I'm not saying all labels are the devil, you know, and I champion the DIY thing. Obviously, there's some fantastic record labels out there. But from my personal experience, I've just preferred being in the driving seat, and Johnny and I have learnt to love, to a degree, the business and marketing that comes with it all. But yeah, it's a fucking lot of work.
It is a lot of work. But the thing is, the point that you made there is it's you and Johnny. Yeah. In my case, it's me. Yeah. So when even a small label comes on and says, we'll take this off your shoulders, it's like, please. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I know I can do it, so I can keep an eye on what they're doing and say, well, this is how I would have done it, or this is what I would expect from you. I mean, I can, it's not like I have to just sort of hand over everything and trust them and hope they do it right. I mean, at least I know what I'm doing. But to not have to do it yourself, it's like, oh,
yeah.
You mean I don't have to chase up the guy doing the mastering and get the master to the production house and thank goodness, you know what I mean? It's just like, for once, that's not my job. So I'm grateful for that. In that respect, I mean, I am grateful for that, and I appreciate there is a cost in all of that. So then it means I don't get all the money that comes from the release, but I don't have to do all the work.
Time, yeah.
Oh my goodness! But it's not just. I mean, the other thing to consider is that I'm not 20, and so I'm not just going home to my mum and my mum's cooking my dinner and or whatever. I go home and I'm still responsible for a household. I don't have the time I had when I was that age, and even if I did, I maybe don't have the energy I had when I was that age. So intellectually, I am probably better off, but physically, you have to just think, I'm in my 60s. I'm not like some young spring chicken. And yes, I could still run 5K tomorrow if necessary, but it doesn't mean that I want to run 5K tomorrow just because I've got nothing else to do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's about sort of managing your capabilities, and so that there's some left to do the other stuff that you need to do.
Now, I know you're currently self-managed. Has it been that way for most of your career? And could you tell our listeners what's involved with the day-to-day running of your artist business? Obviously, we've touched on a bit of it.
Yeah, I think I had a manager for about 2 months in the summer of 1980, and that was Frank Murray, who then went on to manage the Pogues. Lovely fella, Frank, but obviously, like, just not. He'd been the tour manager for Thin Lizzy, so he'd come from a different world. You know what I mean? So I remember when we would like travel up to a gig in the back of a van, and Frank would go up on the train first class, and we'd say, "But Frank, why did you do this? What do you mean?" It didn't even occur to him that's not how you travel. It's like,
no.
Yeah, Frank, we were in the back of a van,
and he probably expensed that to you guys as well.
Oh yeah, that's how we knew. And we said, "But Frank, why are you spending our money?
Yeah,
on a first class travel?" And he couldn't. He was like looking at us like, "Why? How else do you travel?" And it's like, well, yeah, you travel, the cheapest way possible. But he didn't. So basically, he had come from a world that didn't really fit our reality. And so that didn't last. But that's the only time I've ever had a manager. I've never had a manager. I mean, I've sort of been part of collectives where I suppose in a sense, so like Special AK, Jerry had a manager, but I always knew that they weren't working on my behalf.
Right. What about booking agents and things like that?
I had a booking agent. I had a live agent in 1980. And then I just got another one. I just got one again about 2 weeks ago.
Cool.
So I haven't had a live agent for 43 years.
Really? Self-booked that whole time? I do have, to be fair, I have a DJ agent who approached me. So I think I've worked with them for about 5 or 6 years. And so the DJ stuff they would look after, but people would come to me with shows and they would do the back end, so that they would do the invoicing and contracts and things like that, but they didn't find shows for me mostly because it's not their job. You know what I mean? And it's not their area of expertise, the live area. They know about DJs, so they handle loads of DJs, so that's what they know about. Right. And would you say the booking agent you've just taken on Is that looking positive already? Have you had a few bookings already, or is it still early days?
Well, literally just signed a contract yesterday, so and that doesn't really come into place till the end of this month. I mean, it's somebody I know. He used to, he used to book for another band I know, so I've known him for years, and he's a lovely guy. Whatever happens, it will be fine because we get on, and we had, we used to like chat when he worked for other people. So
yeah.
but he kind of left the business for a bit. I think it's COVID prompted, and he realised that actually it's what he likes doing, so he's come back. And I'm his first signing apparently,
Cool.
so I'm very pleased about that.
So do you think that like we've recovered to a point now after the pandemic, the live music business, do you think that things have picked up and the demand is back and people are feeling safer at gigs? And because I know that it's been a long hangover, like getting back out there, and it's been hard for everybody, isn't it? The artists, the fans, the venues. Yeah, do you feel like we're over the worst of it, or do you think we still got some work to do?
No, I don't think it's over at all. Loads of people. I played a show a couple of weeks ago, and apparently it was sold out, but there were loads of people who didn't turn up.
Really?
So loads of no-shows, and I think that's what happens as people buy tickets and don't turn up. I think that venues are struggling to pay their electric bills, so they're not taking people. They're not putting gigs on for part of the week, or they'll only put gigs on where they can guarantee a sellout, or at least 90%. If they're not going to get that, they won't. You can't get the gig. I think that lots of people who used to go to gigs all the time have stopped going to gigs all the time. They've just kind of got out of the habit, and instead of going to gigs now, they'll stay home, or or they've turned during COVID they turned their garage into a bar or something like that, and they stay home and like have mates round. And I think the reality is people who were two-tone fans who used to go to gigs regularly, who may now be in their late 50s, early 60s, maybe have just stopped going to gigs and just aren't going to go anymore. They aren't, they had a couple of years where they didn't go and it was all right.
Yeah.
And you're never going to get them back. So, and I think it then behoves us to try and influence, well, not influence, but just to try and reach out. And I hate that phrase, reaching out. I'm going to reach out to a younger generation, or to people in, from who are fans of different music, to try and kind of create, to not fill the holes, but basically to make sure that there's someone to go and see you when you go out and play, because otherwise there's not going to be. I think the other point about that is that because this business is only just now becoming an adult, if you see what I mean. You know what I mean? It's like the whole business, the whole kind of pop music business, would you consider Shirley Bassey pop? I don't know, this is my point. Is Shirley Bassey, if you consider Shirley Bassey pop, so you're looking at a woman of colour who was born in the UK, who sort of had hits and was a bit pop. Between me and her, there's Linda Lewis and Pauline Black, and there's nobody else. I mean, there's Sade, as somebody pointed out, but Sade wasn't born in the UK. Sade was born in Nigeria. So, I mean, not that I'm trying to, erase that, but I mean, there's not many of us. And so between Shirley Bassey and us, there's not the kind of the way of behaving, or the kind of path wasn't really defined. So we're still defining the path of how you maintain a musical career after doing it for this amount of time. I mean, who knows? It was like, who knew? Nobody knew that pop was going to last this long. Nobody knew. I mean, like Dance Craze has been re-released. Nobody knew that was going to be. Who knew that anyone was going to be interested in that in 40 years? Apart from, the people who worked on it, who seemed to, do you know what I mean? Joe Dunton thought that that was absolutely the case. I had no idea, but he thought it would be interesting in 40 years, you know. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of making it up as we go along still. There's not a way of being or a way of working. We're literally making it up still at this point.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, in my eyes, the demand will always be there. Do you know? And that's, the live music is one thing that the fucking AI, whatever technology, and you know, streamlining how people consume music. That's one thing they'll never be able to take away from us. You know, so
it can't be reproduced. So it's still something that has to be done by, you know, sort of a human mind, a human concept, a human person has to still do it. So yes, the demand will always be there, but it hasn't. My point is that because of the depression of COVID, and when I say depression, I mean, you know, the pushing back of people not going out, and because people are still, there are people who are still quite rightly concerned about being in small spaces without adequate sort of ventilation. There are people who are, you know, just got older and just actually it's easier to stay home and just listen to music with my mates. I don't know. You have to kind of make sure that you're reaching new people. Otherwise, the people who normally would come to see you have stopped coming. And then what do? You know what I mean? And you sat on your lonesome. You know, you and a couple of people in the audience. So you have to kind of. That's why you, in a sense, sort of keep re-examining what it is you do, because if you want to put it in marketing speak, you have to provide a product that engages with the audience who are going to come out and see you. You know,
so we've got to be more inventive then as creators.
In a way, I think, or you've just got to spread your net a bit wider. You know, because there are always people who are always going to come out, but it isn't always going to be the same people. Because, I mean, you know, there are bands I go and see and I just think, I don't even see these people on the streets. Where have they come from? And that, you know, just with a bit of a marketing hat on, you look at that and you think, so where are these people and how do you reach them? You know, and how do you engage with them? Because I don't even know what they do for a living. I don't know, you know, I don't know where they live. I don't see people like this. And that's the thing I think I find the most remarkable is like, how is that? How can you, where are they? What do they do? God.
Greetings, listeners. Jake from Decent Mastering here. Really pleased to be involved with a podcast whose ethos aligns with my own, helping independent artists. My Pay What You Feel mastering service offers inclusivity to music creators with tighter budgets, giving quality audio at a price that suits them. To get in contact, send an email to decentmastering@gmail.com or send me a DM on Instagram @decentmastering. Enjoy the rest of the show.
So you have a new solo album coming out on Sunday Best Recordings on the 26th of May. It's called Version Girl. It's a brilliant collection of covers reworked in a reggae style. Classic songs by the likes of David Bowie, The Stones, and Patsy Cline, to name but a few. Tell us about how the idea for this was born and how it all came together.
How was the idea born? The idea was born out of sort of the fact that we were in COVID and we had the studios were open for a very small window. And so we could get in a studio and record a couple of bits, just, you know, because at that point I was still in the mindset of, oh yeah, let's record some tunes and maybe put out a single or whatever. I mean, basically I had a little, for the first time in years, I had a little bit of savings and I thought, let's do some recording because like, that's how musicians think. I've got some money. Let me now completely spend it all in the studio. But yeah, I mean, I had a little bit of money. When I say a little bit of money, you know, like sort of literally just like a couple of grand or whatever, but I had money in the bank and I just thought, yeah, let's put a single out. you know, just to kind of keep things going, as it were. I thought, oh, we'll do like a happy sad. That was the idea, to do like happy sad. So we had this like original tune, which was really, really kind of upbeat and whatever. And I just thought, because during the first part of lockdown, all I was thinking of is I'd wake up and I'd go, what day is it? And I didn't know what day it was. And so that Every Day is Like Sunday was going through my head, but it was the Pretenders version, I have to say, because I love Chrissie Hynde's voice. So that was the one that was kind of playing in my head. And I thought, oh yeah, it'd be really good to do a cover of that. You know, like Every Day is Like Sunday, and that can be the sad bit. So we recorded it and recorded the other one as well. And I can't for the life of me remember why, but because I had, I think it was 3 years before, I'd done a tune with a collab with Dub Pistols. They were on Sunday Best. And because, in fact, I don't even know why, but anyway, Bolshy, who runs Sunday Best, who I've known for years, sort of said, well, have you got any, you know, have you done anything? I said, well, yeah, we just did this thing in the studio. And I thought, well, let me play the cover, because we'll keep the, you know, we're going to put a single out, keep the other one as you know, part of a previous project, which was called the Low Tech Forward. Basically, you know, there was going to be an album of like what had been on Low Tech 1 and 2, plus some other tracks and whatever. And I thought, we'll just keep that for that Low Tech project. I sent her the tune that we'd done, the cover that we'd done, and she was, oh, that's really good, you know, we'd like to put it out. It's like, oh, okay. So that was, you know, one single. Yeah, all right. Why don't you do an album? It's like, oh, okay. But, you know, we were in and out of lockdown. Remember that thing where it'd be okay for a few months, and then we'd be in lockdown again. And
yeah.
So there was no time. We couldn't actually get together to write. I mean, there probably would have been a way of doing it, but because I was also teaching online, I knew how difficult that was. Let's just do covers. Let's just do some covers, just do some unlikely covers, because then the song's already written. All we've got to do is choose the right covers and work out what kind of style we're going to do them in. Because it's not just reggae. It's like, you know, we did ska, we did rocksteady, we did early reggae. There's an element of like two-tone ska, but yeah. So it's, you know, we went through the different types of Jamaican music. So just to kind of highlight how flexible the style of music is. I mean, that's obviously the spin you put on it, but it is also the way I was thinking. Mm-hmm. It's like very flexible music. You can reinterpret songs in an appropriate style, but it won't necessarily be like, for instance, doing a Patsy Cline song, doing a country song. You probably could do a rocksteady version, but the best way to do it is, you know, like to do it as a ska tune, because it was written at the time that was current, and it worked really well. Mm. So, and to try and get an album's worth, it was like trying to work out, okay, so could we do this? Like we've just, you know, the latest single is What a Wonderful World. I sort of came across it and I just thought, that would be a mad idea. And I thought, actually, would it be a mad idea? I could probably, yeah, I thought, why not? Let's try it, you know, let's try it. Let's see how it goes.
So were you able to sort of do pre-production and rehearse with a band? Was that or was it all just like, right, no, I've picked these 4 songs for this session that I want to have a go at, and we've got to just work it out in the studio as we go?
That's exactly what it was. That's exactly what we did. Yeah, because, you know, you weren't allowed. I mean, recording studios were open, but rehearsal studios weren't.
Yeah.
You know, so it was kind of odd. So we could go in the recording studio and do the work, but we couldn't rehearse anywhere. So we'd just go in the studio. I mean, basically, you know, the guys who formed the backbone of the band were brilliant musicians anyway, I would say. So it was kind of feeling your way. There was a bit of feeling your way, but you go in with an idea of how you wanted it to sound. And then if it worked out, good. If it didn't,
I prefer working like that, actually. I think it keeps things fresh, because you can, in the rehearsal room, when you're going over songs and writing in there or reworking songs in the way that you did, you can sort of rehearse a song and and start to second guess yourself a bit if you've been in the rehearsal room all afternoon just going around this one song or whatever, trying to perfect it and that. Whereas I feel like if you go in the studio and just lay it all down as you go, and it's just a bit more of a vibe and a bit more free flowing in my experience.
Well, yeah, see, I've done both, and the EPs I put out before, the Low Tech series, were exactly that. We rehearsed them, and then we go into the studio and record them live, and they would be recorded live, and people vibed off each other, and it was great. So you go in, you knew what you were doing, you go in and you could just record 3 or 4 tunes in one day, you know, and then the only time I would do something separately from that is to record. You then take a bit of time to record brass, because you can't record brass at the same time, it's too loud. And vocals, I would record vocals in a separate session away from everybody else, so that you can sort of conjure whatever you need to conjure to produce the right vocal. But yeah, the low tech sessions were all about rehearsing, getting the tune down, and going in there and actually just being able to play it really well all together in a room all together.
Yeah, it all depends on the project, I guess, doesn't it, and how the artist likes to work.
Yeah, and it depends on it depends on the musicians, and it depends on how good the studio is. So if you're in the studio, I mean, you know, when we did the Low Tech 4, we were very lucky. I mean, Paul Weller gave us some time at Black Barn, and Black Barn has a great sound.
Yeah.
So, you know, and the engineer works there all the while, Charles, so he knows how it should sound. So you just go in there and like set up how you want to set up, and you know, and it sounds great already. You know what I mean? So it doesn't require a lot of fiddling about, because all those edges are smoothed out in rehearsal. So you just go in and play like it's, and I, you know, obviously I would sing live along with it, but that was just as a guide vocal. So it was like performing on stage, and you know, you can all see each other. So it's more like performing on stage. So it's a different vibe. We would be working it out in the studio, but we would have, you know, we'd all be there. Like, well, there'd be bass, drums, guitar, and me there. And then everything else was put on afterwards or at a different time. I mean, you know, including vocals, I would just be doing a guide vocal. But yeah, bass, drums and guitar were recorded all together. I think sometimes Lenny's the producer, but he's also a guitarist. I think he can't help but tinker. So he would go home and maybe re-record part of his guitar parts because he can't help himself. Because, you know, but yeah, there was definitely that going on.
Can you tell us a bit about the work you've been doing with the Music Venue Trust and why it's so important for us as a community to look after our grassroots venues?
Because it's where everyone starts. It's important to have grassroots music venues, because otherwise in, you know, sort of 20 years there'll be nobody to play in the stadia, because they won't have actually had the chance to get that good, you know. So that's why it's important. And because the thing is, you know, there may be 1,000 new bands, but only 5 of them might progress all the way. But a lot of them will find their level on the way, and some may always play in grassroots music venues, some may play in different size venues, but there still needs to be places for them to play, because more people go to grassroots music venues every week than go and watch opera, you know. But like Househouse gives most of its money to opera rather than to it doesn't give much money to sort of music industry. So that's why it's important, because it's a proving ground. I mean, you know, back in the day in theatre, there used to be repertory theatre. So you go to drama school, you leave drama school, you join a rep company, and you work in theatre, in plays, that you take all the way around the country. So you tour, you join a rep company, you you know, you learn your part, you tour, and you do something. And every week you might do a different show. And that's how you learnt your craft. I don't know how actors manage now because the rep system has been sort of dismantled, which I think is a shame. And what we're in the process of doing now is kind of almost dismantling the kind of the music business's version of it, as in grassroots music venues. I mean, 30% of sort of closed. I mean, look, in fact, there's no point in me quoting figures because whatever I say, it's going to be wrong, and it will be. So whenever you hear this, it will be different. But if you want the latest figures, obviously check Music Venue Trust. They have the latest figures. It's literally their job to have the latest figures. It's not mine. But we all can sort of point to a grassroots music venue that we have known and loved that is no longer there. I mean, you know, when I think of like every Thursday night, I'd go to the Marquee in Wardour Street in London and go and watch Ultravox, and not the Ultravox that became famous, because the guy who fronted it was a different guy who fronted it. But like they would be at the Marquee every Thursday, so you could go and see Ultravox every Thursday. They'd be on. I mean, you know, people had residencies in these places, and that's how they got to be good at what they did. You know, but you don't get to be good if you don't work at it and work out the songs and work out who's going to work in what position in the band and things like that. You know, I mean, I saw David Bowie play in the Marquee. You know, wow. It was admittedly it was a TV show, but you know, he was there for sort of Friday and Saturday. He was there. You know, the 3 sessions. So David Bowie played at the Marquee. You know, other places. In fact, I was trying to think the other day, the first 5 gigs I ever went to, all those venues are shut. So, and this is bearing in mind, I started going to gigs 50 years ago. Yes, folks, you heard that right. 50 years ago, I went to my first gig. So I think it was March 1973. I went to my first gig at the Rainbow in London to see the Sweet. And that is now a church. I say church, I actually mean scam. But anyway, that's, you know.
Sweet. That was
yeah.
Blockbuster.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But cat suits and all that, and mullets
suits.
and all that.
Cat suits, mullets, sequins, makeup, yeah, all of that. Builders in mascara, basically. But they were really, really good band, though.
Yeah.
Really, really good band. Yeah, I can remember one of the times I snuck into Top of the Pops, I saw them. They were kind of walking around as well. Or was it? No, it wasn't Sweet. It was Slade who were wandering around when I snuck into Top of the Pops. So before I was ever in a band. But yeah, so that's shut. I saw the New York Dolls at the Rainbow Room in Bieber, which is on Kensington High Street. Bieber doesn't exist. I'm sure the Rainbow Room has been torn down and is now Staff Room or something like that. But that was, you know, that doesn't exist. The
Astoria was a big
exist.
one for me. The Astoria on Charing Cross Road, and the Mean Fiddler that was below it. Yeah, I used to go to lots of gigs there when I was like 16, 17. Yeah. It was always a dream to play there, but yeah, it shut down years ago for the Crossrail.
Yeah, or the Elizabeth line, as we now call it.
The Lizzie line, yeah.
But those venues are being restored. So there is a small venue called the Lower Third. That's it. It's the Lower Third. I mean, there was a Bowie reference. So there's a small venue called the Lower Third on Denmark Street.
Is that where the 12 Bar Club used to be?
It's beneath the 12 Bar. So there is part of the 12 Bar included in the bar upstairs. And then you go downstairs to the venue, and it's very nice. There is another one there, isn't there? There's another kind of medium-sized venue which has just opened, which is, I mean, it's all underground. And then there's going to be supposed to be another big one, a bigger one, opening as well. But I mean, that's, they are trying to put back the venues that disappeared. So there were 3 venues, and they are trying to put back.
Good.
2 have been put back, and I'm not sure if the other one will go ahead or not, but anyway, we'll see. I mean, we don't really need another big massive venue.
Yeah, it's the grassroots.
It's the
sort of
grassroots
3 to
ones we need.
500 caps
Yeah.
and smaller, I guess.
Because the Borderline has disappeared, which was
Yeah,
near
that was
there
a
as
great
well.
venue, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
that's another one that's disappeared. That was just walking distance from Tottenham Court Road
Yeah.
Tube.
So what's the strategy of the Music Venue Trust? Because I was reading that it's an organisation that wants to buy it so that the community owns the venues. Is that how it works?
Well, that's Music Venue Properties, which has basically come from Music Venue Trust. So
Right.
the board of Music Venue Properties is like a whole load of people who are kind of experts in community shares, in property, in and things like that, and me. And I'm kind of like, I sit there and think, why am I in this room? But anyway, I'm there as well. I mean, as to basically be a musician on site, say actually, you know what I mean, that be that person. And yes, I mean, these are there's a guy there who his whole, that's kind of what he's really concentrated on, is community shares and community ownership and all of that. And he's set up those kind of models all over the country. But yeah, we launched a campaign called Own Our Venues, so that we would raise money from the public, but also get grants from Arts Council and record labels and things like that to pay for to buy. There were 9 venues that were deemed to be at risk, most at risk, and so the plan was to try and raise 2.5 million. We got to 2.3 million.
Excellent.
And it's possible we'll still be able to buy all 9, but certainly the plan is, we had our first board meeting this week, and the plan is to try and at least start by buying the first 3, so that people don't think that we've just kind of taken the money and run off with it and not doing anything with it. But yeah, we've 3 venues we're now looking into, getting valuations, basically put it into action. So surveys, whatever. And so the first 3 will be in fact, I don't even know why I'm saying this. I don't know how long it's going to take, but the first 3 have been earmarked for purchase.
Brilliant.
So it's, actually getting it done, because it was really important that after having quite a long campaign and raising all this money, that we actually did start by making the purchases and didn't just kind of talk about it and then say, oh no, actually it's going to take us a year to make the first purchase, because then you just look like a load of fakers.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 venues will get purchased as soon as possible. But the idea, I mean, obviously we're kind of looking at the European model, where venues tend to be owned by either local community groups, or by local government, or by central government. And you go on tour in Europe, you don't have to change in the toilet, you know what I mean? Because there's a dressing room.
There's funding, yeah.
And there's funding. And like, the notion of being a musician is you're not some sort of outlier. You're part of the cultural fabric of the country, and that's how you're considered. So, you go and play a venue in Switzerland, and there's a washing machine and tumble dryer, you're on tour, you can wash your clothes and whatever. You go to, in this country, small venues are kind of run on, they're funded by beer sales. And that's a ridiculous way. It's a ridiculous model. Because you're then reliant on, people drinking more than they need to drink to have a good evening. But also, it means that the people who run venues don't really get a proper living. They're doing it for love rather than money. It means that, essentially, we shouldn't be basing our cultural output or our cultural experiences in this country on people consuming a drug basically,
Yeah.
which is what what you're talking about. Like, have
Yeah.
a beer by all means, but don't rely on
It's the
beer to
alcohol industry
underpin.
has funded the live music industry to a great extent, really, isn't it?
Which is shocking. I mean, not saying I'm not grateful and all of those things, but that's a shocker. When when you think how much money there is actually to fund other arms of culture and how they're deemed legitimate, I think popular music is a legitimate arm of culture and should be properly funded.
Yeah, these venues are cultural heritage sites. Aren't they?
They are. They are. I mean, imagine like the marquee has gone, and imagine the thousands, if not millions, of people who've gone through that venue and what they, the stories they had to tell. I mean, part of the reason that I was on the board is because my dad used to run a venue in Piccadilly. Hard to believe, but yes, Black Man Runs Club in London's West End during the 40s and 50s. Shocker. But yeah, he had a club. And I've sort of said to people about that before, and it doesn't kind of... It was like, yeah, really. But actually, since somebody pointed out that there is footage, there's kind of Pathé News footage of his club, it's like, oh, it's like, yeah, it really happened. It was really there. And so I suppose that's my link to the industry, and the fact that club has gone, but the cultural experience that people had whilst they were there doesn't just die with that. It lives on, even if it only lives on in me. And now it lives on, on film, which is pretty rare. But, I
mean, look at the Cavern Club in Liverpool. They knocked down the original, didn't they?
Yeah.
Look how many people flock there now, day in, day out, to see a replica just round the corner or whatever, And that shows you that how much people give a fuck, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel just like we've really got to do more as a community.
Well, the Cavern was built. I think the Cavern, people bought bricks, didn't they? And I think it's their original bricks, like what's been reconstructed. They've reconstructed part of it from original bricks. It faces in a different direction, but it's still there. It's not the same, but it is still there.
It's the next best thing.
You can still, you can still get the experience.
Yeah, have you been in there?
I played there, yeah.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a great gig. Yeah, on a Wednesday. We played there on a Wednesday. Loads of people turn up. We just think, oh my God. And then, and then there's something else goes on the other end, which I think looks more like the original Cavern. And we played the bit that is, well, it's got a lot of the original bricks and whatever, but they've been put back. They weren't there. But yeah, I mean, and then Eric's, I'm not sure if that is, which is kind of in the same street opposite. I don't know if that's even open now. But yeah, I mean, we're losing venues at an alarming rate. And so the first venue I played in, Windsor Castle on Harrow Road, shut. It was kind of the back room of a pub. And because, quite rightly, loads of those pubs had function rooms, and you could do gigs in them. And
they're a dying breed, aren't they? Pub function rooms.
But I mean, they were brilliant, and that's where sort of the music business, in a lot of places, the music business started. And it would be in a pub function room, because the pub function room would have a stage, and maybe wouldn't have professional lighting, but it would have like something. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that back room in the Dublin Castle was the function room, wasn't it, originally?
Yeah, of course.
Before it was like known as a live music venue.
Yeah, it's a pub with a function room at the back. I mean, and that's where you played in the function room, because it's a function, isn't it? I mean, but yeah, that's because they were built in the days where there wasn't telly, so people did actually have live entertainment was part of the normal cultural offer. Now we're talking in those terms, normal cultural offer. Yeah.
So I've got one more question I want to ask you before we conclude. and that's, what advice would you give an aspiring artist that's just getting started on their journey?
Have another job.
I thought you might say that.
Have a backup. Have a backup. Always have another plan. Always have a plan B. I wouldn't say you don't need. I probably shouldn't even say this, but you don't need a degree in like modern music to be in a band, but you do need to have done at least, I would say, in this day and age, to do like a BTEC level 3, and if you can do another year after that somewhere, then you're set, and everything that it took me 10 years to find out, you will know already. So having seen, I've taught on a BTEC level 3, but I've also, like, my son did it, and he was learning about stuff that took me years to find out about, and you're just like, oh my God, it's so, it's so sensible to teach them, but you don't really need to do it. The degree, I think, is pushing it a bit. It's not really necessary, but you do need to do a couple of solid years of working, doing those. If you're that age, put it that way. If you're not 16, then that's not the place to do it, I don't think. But for people of that age, it's a good place to start. And with if you've got a good tutor, it's a really good course, and you learn about the ins and outs of the business and how it works, and it's great. Failing that, I would say practice, the 10,000 hours thing. But the thing is, if you're doing BTEC, you will already have done those 10,000 hours to get on that course. But yeah, the 10,000 hours, and just inform yourself, join. I don't know if you can join you can still join the MU at a reduced rate, because there's lots of stuff to be found out there. Make sure you join PPL. PRS is still £100 or something like that to join. Nobody's managed to knock that back yet. Although I did corner the head of PRS at one point and explain to him that it's not fair. But yeah, those kind of organisations, get yourself a publisher. There's publishers like Centric Music, which are completely free. They may not be the best example, but it is free, and you will get your publishing. And make sure you report your gigs, and all of these things. Just kind of, there's all these extra avenues of making money that you don't know about. You know what I mean? And when I think how much PRS money I must have lost by not telling them I was
Registering
playing
gigs.
yeah,
It's a big one,
who knew? I knew nothing about that.
That's half the battle, isn't it? The information's not that widely publicised, is it? About all these income streams and grants and that are out there.
Well, that's musicians. The other thing. Grants help musicians do, like, grants. Arts Council do grants. It's a bit harder, but there are grants to be had. There are local grants. You never know. Ask locally, find out what there is. But yeah, just like if you're in a band now, you have to work. You have to work at it, and you have to try hard, and you have to. Yes, you can do self-release, but follow your ideas. Don't, because obviously what I did ended up in not disaster for me, but disaster for a lot of people. But yeah, have publishing, do report your gigs, and also just go and see people, go to gigs, watch other people. If there's a band that you really admire, go and watch them, analyze what it is they do, take it apart, look at it, watch them. Go and watch your heroes, and then produce your version of how you're going to do that through the lens of your own head and your own mind. But you got to work at it. It basically, what I used to say to students is, music is work, and the harder you work, the more fun you'll have. But it's a job. It's work. It's not. Yeah. It's not. It's not a DOS. Far from it. It's not a DOS. It's work.
Brilliant advice. Well, Rhoda Dakar, thank you so much for doing this today. Thanks for sharing all your pearls of wisdom with our listener base of DIY musicians. And yeah, best of luck with the new album, Version Girl.
Thank
Nice
you very
one.
much.
Thank you.